Well, good morning, and thanks so much for the opportunity to be here. I'm going to let you in on the scam. This isn't actually a customer innovation. All of the innovation here was done by InterSystems. But I'm so incredibly grateful for their partnership in making that innovation possible. To understand the innovation, you have to first understand our problem. And to understand our problem, you have to first understand our work. So what's our work? I'm the medical director of something called clinical engineering. And I'd wager that not one of you knows what that is. It's testament to our success and the fact that you probably didn't go to medical school. Both good choices. So I'm going to start by telling you what the heck clinical engineering is. When you come from a place like Mass General, people imagine fancy things. The cloistered technology of our operating rooms. The high-tech, high-touch equipment of our labs. But the reality of our work day to day is much more retail. It's what you see on the screen here. It's the care and feeding of the medical equipment that provides an interface between the built environment of the hospital and our patients. And that clinical equipment, it lives a hard life, just like our doctors and nurses. It's subjected to all of the bumps and bruises that anyone who's ever worked on the front line of a human-facing organization has been subjected to. And just like every other aspect of healthcare, we struggle with patient access problems. Somebody decided to take a wheelchair all the way to Fenway Park. That's a long way for those of you who aren't from Boston. We benefit from public-private partnership. This is Biomed's version of a health information exchange. All of the wheelchairs from the area hospitals accumulating lovingly in the dump. And blessedly, the guys at the dump, when enough accumulate, they bring them back to us. We're very grateful. But at the end of the day, we're really here to enable our patients to enjoy what matters to them, like this lovely art, where I have to say the respect for the institution is palpable in the choice not to tag the wheelchair. That's Biomed. We do it with 200 committed clinical engineers and biomedical technicians. They do it caring for 100,000 regulated medical devices, and they're scattered over 10 million square feet of hospital space. But as I just showed you, 10 million square feet, that's just the beginning. The reality is they're drifting out across eastern Massachusetts because we've got doors and ambulance ramps and helicopters and even a boat dock. So it's a hard job living on the front lines of healthcare. And that hard job requires break fix. The bed is broken, the call comes in, the tech goes out, the bed is repaired. I'll let you in on a secret. This ticket got really fast service. Does anyone recognize the left hand in the picture? That was my wife's bed when our second child was born. All of those medical devices have a routine maintenance schedule. Have you ever driven a little past 5,000 miles on your oil change? It's okay, I forgive you, I do that too. But we never go past dates on our regular inspection of our medical equipment. I think this was our second child's newborn nursery warmer. It had been appropriately inspected. And then there's critical downtime response, where the routine break fix and the routine maintenance has to give way to the critical incident of the day. Who recognizes what our engineers are huddled around there? It's the blue screen of death from CrowdStrike. The pager goes off at 2 o'clock in the morning, and that doesn't change the fact that there's a heart liver transplant scheduled for the next day. You got to get up and you got to figure out how to fix it, because we're going to do that heart liver the next morning no matter what. That's the commitment to the patient. And when we do that work, we do it over a wide array of technologies. Our most common technology are our infusion pumps. Large volume, microinfusion, patient-controlled, well over 10,000 of them, delivering millions of infusions a year. Our point-of-care imaging and diagnostic modalities, sophisticated, fragile equipment of the sort that used to be limited to our diagnostic suites and our operating rooms, that's grown wheels and rolled down the hallways to the hard-charging emergency department. And our operating rooms, hybrid ORs, fixed imaging modalities, surgical AV integration, surgical navigation, and robotic-assisted surgery. This is the stuff of primetime dreams and everyday miracles. Nearest and dearest to my heart, the intensive care unit. You call it an intensive care unit and it sounds like a place, a building, a room. That's not quite the right way to think about it. It's actually a scaffolding on which committed doctors, nurses, respiratory therapists, and allied health professionals build a one-of-a-kind machine, a machine that's designed to get you through the single most vulnerable day of your life, a machine that comes into existence for you and goes away the minute you're discharged. They build that machine on the framework of the ICU out of the Lego bricks that we provide them. Critical care ventilators for your lungs, mechanical circulatory supports for your heart, renal replacement therapy for your kidneys, ventilators, tens of channels of infusion, a one-of-a-kind machine. And our hope in all of these cases is it will provide the perfect maintenance and the perfect ergonomics that allow us to never be the main character. We are, at the end of the day, first and foremost cellar dwellers. We want to stay in that basement wonderland of the hospital and never be noticed. That's perfect success. Unfortunately, as the ICU and the operating room got more technologically dense, we started to become the main character. Connecting all of this medical equipment and getting the data from that medical equipment, the vital signs you see there, into our electronic medical record was becoming a full-time job for our nurses, respiratory therapists, and anesthesiologists. We can all get quick at a 10 key, but that's not a great integration engine. And you guys all know that's just a computer. So moving that handful of numbers from our special medical device computers into the medical record, it felt like surely there was a better way to do that than by hand. This is the birth of biomedical device integration. It's a really simple concept. You walk into the doctor's office and you get plugged into the machine. That's the bad part that you're not excited about. The pointy end is coming for you. But once you're plugged into the machine, surely we can plug the machine into the medical record and do that documentation automatically. That's the entire concept. Move the number that's about you from the machine that you're already plugged into the medical record using a computer instead of using a skilled professional's fingers working a keypad. The devil's always in the details. There are about as many medical device integration patterns as there are medical device vendors, but this is the most common one, the aggregation server, where all the devices of a given kind will phone home to a specific aggregation engine that's designed to collect the data from that device, papering over its proprietary format and emitting HL7 messages. Those HL7 messages flow forward to our InterSystems message passing middleware before going on to our medical record. And this is how the system operated up until COVID. We were very happy with it. We honestly never thought about that message passing middleware. It was the perfect technology for biomed, unnoticed. But then COVID hit, and suddenly we were asked to do more. We needed to turn on secondary web viewers so that our staff could cover more patients from further away. And we needed to route alarms directly to the nurse providing care for a patient's iPhone so that we could quiet down our now double capacity ICUs. And that shifted our attention towards that middleware and the hope that we might get more out of it. So where are we starting from? We're starting from the electronic medical record, always growing, but growing with a small number of data points, a few vital signs that are collected on you every 4 hours if you're on a med-surg floor, maybe once a minute if you're under general anesthesia, maybe every 10 seconds if you're under general anesthesia. That's what's growing in our medical record, and it's growing forever and ever, getting larger and larger. Back here, under our aggregation server, that's where we work most of the time. That works like a black box data recorder in a modern aircraft. It collects every single bit that flows out of our medical devices, and it's there for a full disclosure investigation if something goes badly. But, just like a black box recorder, the next successful episode of care will overwrite the oldest episode of care. If we don't go back looking for the problem, it's gone forever. So that's where we're starting from. This is COVID, when we're just getting used to the idea that maybe we can get more out of that message passing middleware. That's our work. But I told you I had a problem. My problem is your problem. It's the problem of medicine writ large. Many of you probably got into this during the American Reinvestment and Recovery Act incentive program. You're used to this idea of the triple aim that's been expanded to the quadruple aim. These are the goals that American healthcare has set for itself to improve. What do we want? We want it to cost less. We want to burn our doctors and nurses out more slowly, or better yet, not at all. We want to provide a better population health outcome. We want it to be better. And we want to provide a better patient experience. These are all very reasonable goals that we've committed ourselves to as an industry. What does biomed have to do with this, though? I told you we live in the cellar providing lights-on support for medical devices. It feels like we're part of that expensive problem, right? The truth is we grew out of this bottom half. We grew out of a need to provide better population health. We started from a patient safety perspective. This is the famous To Err is Human report from the Institute of Medicine, making popular the idea that many Americans die of preventable medical errors. More recently, this BMJ article made headlines suggesting that preventable medical errors could be the third most common cause of death in the United States. Those are scary numbers. You don't need to be scared next time you go to the hospital, though. Each study in their own time had reasonable methodological questions raised, which lowered the rate of preventability below 10%. That brings it to only 7,000 people a year who die, a death of a preventable medical error. That feels better than 250,000. On the other hand, it still is far too many. Every single one is a tragedy, and we feel them acutely. These are the events that take us back into that aggregation server to do the full disclosure investigation, the events that send us looking for a root cause, the events that remind us where clinical engineering came from 50 years ago, the need to provide OR safety to protect our patients from electrical injuries and fires in our operating rooms. Those are problems that remain today, but they're blessedly rare. We think less than 100 people will be caught on fire in an operating room in the United States this year. That's better than it used to be and still far too many. We're desperate. We were born to provide safer care. What about the top part? American medicine is something like 20% of GDP. Everybody agrees it's too expensive. And COVID showed us that you can burn out a healthcare professional that takes 15 years to make in 15 days. That's no way to run a system. And it's going to have real consequences. These are the Department of Health and Human Services labor statistics. You're looking at years on the x-axis, going out to 2036 as you go that way. You're looking at staffing adequacy on the y-axis. And unfortunately, you'll notice that 0 is at the top of the slide. We don't have enough. We don't have enough registered nurses today, and the problem's only going to get worse over the decade ahead. Although we have enough anesthesiologists today, we're going to be short 6,000 of them in the decade ahead. Why nurses and anesthesiologists? Because they're our most common customers as clinical engineers. I could have showed you any number of other medical professionals. This is the nature of medicine in the decade ahead. We aspire to provide safer, cheaper, more effective care, but we're going to have to find a way to do it with fewer of the skilled professionals that define the system today. And it's not just the skilled professionals. This is the OECD's estimate of old age dependency. In this plot, every line is a country. The United States is the red plot, or the red line. Years, again, on the x-axis, old age dependency on the y-axis. What's old age dependency? If you've ever been in a hospital, you know that the oldest person is probably the one in the bed, and there are a lot of prime age workers standing around the bed. So this is just saying how many of those prime age workers do you have for every older adult? When we built modern acute care medicine, we had 4 or 5 prime age workers per older adult, the sort of person who's inclined to be our patient. As we get into the century ahead, we're going to have 2. We've got to go from 5 to 2, and we've got 50 years to do it, all while figuring out how to be cheaper and safer. The good news for us, we don't have to invent, we just have to copy. When regularly scheduled commercial air travel started in 1938 with the Pan Am Clipper service, there was a flight crew of 5. It looked like the bridge of a ship. Helmsman, captain, navigator, engineer, radio operator. When you flew down here to Orlando this week, how many of you looked at the front of the plane and saw 5 people? Not a one of you. I bet you all saw two people. I bet a lot of you actually arrived in that 737 from 1976, 1967 rather, 2 years before man landed on the moon, that introduced the first two-man flight crew. They did it. They went from 5 to 2 in half a century. That's exactly what we have to do. How do you do it? The exact same way they did. Automation, routinization. The complexity's there, you got to shift it off the people. We're going to do that with closed-loop medical devices. This is the part that terrifies people at a biomed meeting. You're going to take the device, you're going to transduce the signal, you're going to pass the signal into a software control system, and you're going to directly modify the treatment delivered to the patient. It's the simplest picture in the world to draw. It's an autopilot, it's a full authority digital engine control, and it scares the bejesus out of everyone. You know all the things that can go wrong, and I got news for you, they're all going to happen. We're going to have to get through it together. But when we get through it, my hope is we'll get exactly what aviation got, something which is safer, more reliable, and more affordable. And remember, it's not an aspiration, it's a necessity. We have to get there, because no matter what, we're going from 5 to 2. So what's the data that's going to take us there? This is what flows out of our medical devices today. You've got the waveforms, these things right here. Boop, 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 boop. You know them from prime time. The goal is that you want them to be wiggly, not flat. There's your medical school for the day. These are your trends. They're counting up things that have happened. How many boop, boop, boops? That's your heart rate. This person had 67 in the prior minute. And then there are alarms. Every one of our medical devices enunciates its own alarms directly. And I told you they come out as HL7 messages. This is the part that should be comfortable to everybody in the room. See right there. OBX5, that's the waveform. That's the boop, 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 boop. That's the picture that the doctor, the nurse, the anesthesiologist, the respiratory therapist are using to guide their life-saving treatment in our ICU every day. The challenge, as I told you, is that we throw all of this away. That ring buffer in the aggregation server, it gets overwritten every 90 days. And if we're going to get to that automated medical device future, we're going to want all of this data to be the basis of in silico trials so we can evaluate the safety of these devices before we cut them loose in the hospital. If we want to do that, it's important that we stop throwing this data away today. That's the goal. That was the problem that I took to Jeff and Chi and Maggie and Benjamin and many others at InterSystems. How can I stop throwing this data away today? Because it's going to be the only tool I have to safely get to the future I know we all have to get to, no matter what. And the answer was, well, here's the good news. You're already sending that HL7 traffic into our message passing middleware. And we're quite performant. In fact, when we turned all of our outflow tracks on at full force, we were able to handle it on something that looked more like my laptop than the big iron mainframes that run the medical record. And then you say, well, wait a second, this is a weird data structure. Some of those devices are running at 500 hertz, some of them are at half a hertz. None of the timelines are perfectly synchronized, and there's no end. It's not a document, it flows forever. Some of these ICU encounters are a day, some of them are 100 days. Where are you going to put that? Well, of course, the answer is it's a good thing we've got a really flexible persistence engine under the covers. Why don't we put it there? And we were fortunate to benefit from a fabulous partnership with InterSystems over the past 3 years to build the data structure that can accommodate this idiosyncratic data type and put it in that persistence layer. But then they went further and they said, well, if you're going to make this innovation impactful, you're going to have to expose that data to the workforce you have. The workforce we have, they're good at using SQL. So what if we made that data accessible to you through a SQL projection so your workforce can be productive today? And we said, that's fabulous. And so that's exactly what we did. We started leveraging the middleware more during COVID to give our staff the better ergonomics they required to meet the demands of that moment. And we're starting to capture that data and deploy it forward in this improved SQL projection so that we can build the tools we know we need for the century ahead. I regret that I've come all the way from medical school and I didn't tell you about the Krebs cycle. That was a missed opportunity on my part. I hope you'll forgive me. Instead, what I did was I told you what clinical engineers do. We take care of all of the devices in the hospital that make a hospital instead of a Motel 6. I told you about what the century ahead holds, an unending aspiration that our care should be safer, despite the fact that we're going to provide it to our patients with half as many workers per patient. And I told you about how InterSystems is helping us get there by storing our HL7 traffic in real time in a purpose-built data structure that only they could provide through a partnership that only they were willing to offer. So with that, I want to say thank you so much for your attention, and I can't wait to see what amazing things you guys will do with their technology to help solve the problems that are coming for healthcare in the century ahead, no matter what.